Good afternoon to all of you. I am presenting case of hepatomegaly with seizures and hepatitis in a family. S 7 years female resident of Afghanistan presented with complaints of progressive abdominal distension since 10 months of age. Generalized seizures started at the age of 1 year. Most episodes occur at the late night. Total she had 3 to 4 episodes. She is currently seizure free for past 5 years. She had history of delayed gross motor milestones in the form of history of delayed sitting, standing, and walking, and history of night blindness for past 2 years. Her younger brother, a 5-year male, presented complaints of progressive abdominal distension since 7 months of age, seizures, similar type as she had, started at the age of 10 months. Most of the episodes are late nights. He had total 5 to 6 episodes and was started on valproate in his country. And he also had delayed history of gross motor milestones. This is the slide which shows the family history. They are product of second degree consanguineous marriage. In total, out of the 4 live children, 3 are affected. The youngest sibling is asymptomatic currently. And they had a history of seizures in 2 expired siblings. One expired at day 2 of life and another at 1 year of age, though exact details and cause of the death is not known. On examination, S weight is 22 kgs, which is on 50th centile for the age. A is 13.3 kg, which is less than 3rd centile. Height is 10th centile and less than 3rd centile respectively. BMI is 75th centile for both of the cases. On general physical examination, they don't have pallor or icterus, but they have features suggestive of fat-soluble vitamin deficiency in the form of rickets, which was present in S, and Bitot spots, which were present in both cases. They have typical round faces with prominent chubby cheeks. On examination, they have a...
So like just anybody sweating like they say in Tambola, what do you feel should...
Should I take up this question?
Yeah.
I think this kind of a history where you have irritability, sweating, maybe seizures happening late in the time, when you take a more detailed history, you get this history from the mother that the child was fed a little time away from these seizures and from this symptomatology. This gives you a feeling that this could be because of hypoglycemia. They're happening largely at a time when the child is not being fed. So that's one thing that comes to my mind, that this is basically, these are children who are having repeated seizures because of hypoglycemia.
Just go back, Rajesh. Let's go. So again, back. If you look at the history, the seizures were happening at around 1 year of age. So does that give us any clue as to what could be the underlying etiology?
It basically adds on to what Seema has already said, that as the child grows older, the interval between the feeds increases. And when the child is very young, he is being fed 2.5 hourly, so the chances that he'll develop hypoglycemia are less. Whereas after weaning, when the interval increases, the risk of developing hypoglycemia in a child who's predisposed to develop that because of disease. And that's the reason usually these children will manifest with seizures at around this later half of the infancy. And it's clear-cut hypoglycemic seizures as per the timing of the seizures.
Thank you.
On examination, they have a distended abdomen. In case of S, liver is 7 centimeters below costal margin. Total span was 12 centimeters. Smooth surface, firm in consistency. She had a spleen which was around 5 centimeters along the axis. For A, liver was 6 centimeters below costal margin. Total span was 11 centimeters, firm in consistency. Spleen was smaller, 2 centimeters in size. Cardiovascular system and respiratory system were normal on examination. In central nervous system, they have a normal tone, normal DTRs, but proximal muscular weakness was there on examination. On summarizing the cases, we had 2 siblings from a second degree consanguineous marriage presented with abdominal distension with recurrent late night seizures. Though they had a history of gross motor developmental delay, but development in rest of the domains is normal. They had signs of multiple vitamin deficiency with typical facies and short stature, hepatosplenomegaly, and proximal muscular weakness.
Okay. Just go back. Yeah. So what could be the differentials? If ma'am can start, yeah.
Actually, with this hepatomegaly, along with seizures, hypoglycemia, suggestive of hypoglycemia, it looks more of glycogen storage disorder to me. And the history is chronic, affecting means history is long term and affecting both the sexes, I still would feel glycogen storage disorders would be high on the list, and other inborn errors of metabolism should be considered.
My only problem up till now I was okay till you showed me the examination. Just go back a slide, and you said there was a spleen of 5 centimeter in one and 2 centimeter in the other. That's given me a little, because now it is hepatosplenomegaly. It's not just plain hepatomegaly. Very commonly in glycogen storage disorder, barring one type, you do not see spleen, because most of them do not have chronic liver disease or do not go in for cirrhosis. So I'm a little not very convinced if you are sticking with this splenomegaly present. If you drop the splenomegaly and go to the next slide and call it hepatomegaly, okay with glycogen storage disorder. But with this present, it is a little...
But with these,
We have-
the doll-like faces, see the doll-like faces, the description, the muscle weakness, the splenomegaly and the liver, they are all basically pointing that this is GSD and most likely type 3, because that's the one which will have spleen, that's the one which will have muscle weakness, and that's the one which will have hypoglycemia. So with this typical thing, but with this clinical scenario, I would entertain a possibility of GSD type 3 only, and which has to be proven.
So why not
But the
GSD
point
type
which
4?
is the point which is against a little bit against GSD3 is that the amount of hypoglycemia and the fact that 2 kids have died of hypoglycemia with seizures, which we know that type 3 has less chances of having have less severe hypoglycemia than 1.
So we must
And
also
rickets-
take into account that they were living in a place in Afghanistan where they might not have had access to resources in such a environment. So maybe they were not treated properly for the hypoglycemic episodes.
In the differentials, we have definitely kept a first possibility, glycogen storage disorders. Next, we kept mucopolysaccharidosis as a differential in view of the short stature organomegaly, though less likely because we have kept a possibility of Gaucher's type 1 non-neuronopathic forms because of the organomegaly, though they had splenohepatomegaly and short stature. And there is a history of seizures, though which is less likely in Gaucher's type 1. Non-neuronopathic Niemann-Pick type B. Similarly, they have splenohepatomegaly, which is not there in our cases because they have a massive spleen, while in our case we have a hepatosplenomegaly. And the type B also had a pulmonary involvement, which is one of the characteristic features. They have recurrent chest infiltrates, which are not there in our case.
One second, can I ask what was the developmental, in the physical
they are-
developmental delay or
Motor, only motor. Only motor.
And that too, only the gross motor part was.
So that could be
No, ma'am, I have not mentioned the fundus, but it was all normal.
Could this be some form of a mitochondrial disorder, Dr. Anshu? I mean, just vague any.
Okay.
Because you have got seizures, you've got muscle involvement, you've got a hepatomegaly, you've got probably hypoglycemia. So what goes against a mitochondrial?
It's a proximal weakness only. It's not just a uniform hypotonia. You are saying proximal muscle weakness. And this hypoglycemic mitochondrial would usually have more, and this doll-like facies is not again keeping in touch with mitochondrial myopathy. So I would not consider it as a very strong differential. It can
Definitely
be there, but I will not consider it.
You have here no, he's talking of mitochondropathies. He's talking of mitochondrocytopathies where they usually has a multi-systemic involvement. See here, I feel with the Doll's facies, with the kind of hypoglycemic attacks that you're having, and the large liver protruding abdomen starting from second half of the infancy, we should stick our differential diagnosis within the glycogen storage disease types, various types.
I think we just put the differentials just to discuss, make it a
Okay.
problem. Okay.
On investigations, in CBC, S had HB of 12.6, TLC was 2800 with polymorphs of 65%, platelets was 98,000. And A had HB of 13, which TLC of 16,600 and platelets 4.91. Liver function test shows total bilirubin of 1.1 with 0.4 of direct bilirubin and 0.4 and 0.2 of direct. OTPT and ALP are raised, suggestive of hepatitis in both of children. Albumin was 4.2 and 4.5. Total cholesterol was 123 and 168, which was though higher in the towards higher side in second case, but appropriate for the age. While triglycerides are abnormally high for both of these cases. As there is a muscle involvement, we have done a CPK levels which were raised in both of these cases, both total as well as MB. Random blood sugar levels were 75 and 80 milligram percent in both these cases. Even on doing a continuous monitoring, early morning levels were not severely low. They are around 60 milligram percent. Uric acid levels were 8 and 6.5. Lactate was 3.6 and 2.8. Fasting urinary ketones were 2+ in both these cases. Urinary routine microscopy was normal in both cases. As there is a raised MB levels, we have done an echo which shows a hypercontractile left ventricle with ejection fraction of 65% in S, while normal study and ejection fraction of 60% in A. Viral markers were negative for both these cases.
Why was the viral markers required? Like, this is a chronic illness. I would not. There's no.
Definitely
I think, yeah, please.
just to rule out, because the enzymes are very high in second case because they are 3030.
No, but in a with such a strong.
Actually we'll come to it because
Okay.
the child had come for a specific reason and we'll do a workup for that.
No, but just go back to that slide. Just go back. See, I think, just come, yeah, just stay here. What Anshu was trying to say, that viral markers are not required in this kind of a history where you were working up this kind of a patient. You had some other history for which you were reacting to it, that's a different question. But the message that should go here is that the viral markers are not required in this kind of a chronic illness where you know the hepatomegaly is there and the transaminases are raised. There is no reason for that. Now, if you ask me the question, the RBS appears to be normal, more towards normal. This suggests, like Anshu said, it suggests more of type 3 rather than, or it doesn't suggest type 1 at least. It may suggest the other types, but it doesn't suggest type 1 because in type 1, usually you would find document hypoglycemia. The fasting ketones could be present in all of them. If present, usually they are more likely to be present with type 1 because there the hypoglycemia is more profound usually.
But along with that, you have little uric acid also on the elevated.
So how do you explain the high SGOT and SGPT levels in the second case? How do we
SGOT
explain the high SGOT, SGPT
No,
levels?
SGOT and PT can be raised in GST. They can be raised to the range of 10 to 20, 30 times upper limit of normal. So, until unless you had a clinical illness to suspect, like an acute illness, like supposing the child had developed icteric illness or something.
In the second case, the child was on Valparin. So that was one reason.
Valparin
Yeah, okay. On the
Initially,
second
was
case.
okay.
Yeah, because of the seizures, the second child was on Valparin. So that is the reason why we thought that probably this could be raised because of that initially. Because of the seizures and...
It makes sense because the AST seems to be much higher than and Valparin does seem to cause so that could be one reason. But then otherwise also, if you give the similar history for both of them, starting from the early childhood, then I feel that transaminases are expected to be raised, maybe not that much, but expected to be raised.
And what about
triglycerides should be on the higher side. Cholesterol could be on the higher side. Go to the next slide. The hyperuricemia should be there, which you see here. It's at least higher end of the normal this thing. The lactate is high, which is usually there. And of course, if there is a muscular involvement, then CPK-MB would be also on the higher side. Ketones are usually seen along with hypoglycemia, which is a little a little surprising that you find ketones, but at the same time you don't. Ketones should have been done at the same time as the blood sugars. That will give you an idea about. So this is the kind of metabolic abnormalities that you see in these patients, and it's largely happening because the gluconeogenesis and the glycolysis both have a final self-limiting step of where the glucose synthetase is working. This is true for glycogen type 1. and that stops. And because of that, everything in behind starts accumulating.
And for type 1, probably you have a neutropenia also, 2,800 count. That will also, with ketones 2 plus, that will
Neutropenia
probably suggest type 1A.
1B.
Sorry.
And 1B will have some other history. What history should have been there?
And recurrent infection, though
What-
it's not
huh?
coming to neutropenia range.
What other history should have been there for 1B?
Yes.
Yeah, there should have been history of diarrhea, enterocolitis-like history.
And that can also suggest bite-out spots.
Then this child has got a big spleen. So whether these counts are due to the hypersplenism or
the
this
counts
is
can
really
also be explained because
of the
the-
large spleen.
So have you done the bone marrow?
No, ma'am, we have not done the bone marrow.
So why were you thinking of bone marrow? Sorry.
To differentiate between the hypersplenism or actually the...
No, we didn't do. We did an endoscopy. So
Because what happens in 1B with chronic diarrhea, with evidence of rickets, with evidence of vitamin A deficiency, with hypoglycemia, ketones, elevated uric acid, all these and neutropenia will go more for
actually,
rickets.
It's all favoring type 1. And that is, but the spleen is not something that
Spleen is something which is...
The SGPT and the ASTLT could be raised to this level in type in the first child. Go back to the first child.
600. No.
No. Which one? The type 1, the first child.
SGPT.
Go back.
Both the children obviously must be having the same disease.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he says that the second child was receiving Valproate. So that's why he's explaining the little 3,000.
Even the high 600 levels of SGOT and 200 levels of SGPT, is it possible that they can have in type 1?
Less likely, type 1 has less than 10 times, type 3 has got
Much higher.
Type 1 is very low.
Very low. I agree.
Second is even the clinical history. Is that behaving like type 1 that...
No, in this, I think there's a dichotomy. Some features, as we said, like muscle
Right.
weakness and splenomegaly and this transaminases are towards type 3. But these profound seizures by which the child has died because of hypoglycemia, these blood sugars of 75, 80 are not favoring the type 3. So
And
it's
the
not
other
a
thing like
categorically this side
triglyceride and
or that side.
cholesterol are also not too high.
Yeah.
If you look at the triglycerides and the cholesterol, they're also not very high. So
Yeah.
again, that also is not in favor of it being a type 1.
So there are some things which are favoring type 1 and there's some things which are favoring others. In fact, most of them could be...
Okay, next.
More are towards type 3 in this patient. So I would agree with type
Ultrasound abdomen showed enlarged liver with coarse and ecotexture, multiple cirrhotic nodules, splenomegaly with features of portal hypertension. Upper GI endoscopy done showed grade 2 to 3 varices, esophageal varices. This slide shows a liver biopsy where hepatocytes are laden with glycogen on treatment with PAS stain. The PAS. Ma'am, I'm coming. Next slide.
Whatever
this-
has come on the biopsy is showing.
This slide shows PAS staining abolished on prior treatment with diastase. And this slide shows distended hepatocytes and the presence of fibrosis surrounding the hepatocytes.
Okay.
So both,
So now this child has got fibrosis in the liver biopsy and there is glycogen in the liver biopsy, which we were expecting. So now with all this, do we have some consensus as to what the...
It again goes more towards type 3 because you are having fibrosis, you are not having that much of fat and development of cirrhosis and along with the other features, I would say this is more towards type 3.
type 3. Okay. So ma'am, how do... so the basis of making, in India at least, we don't have the enzyme studies to look at the tissue samples, but I think this is what we do as a part of workup. So is there anything else?
I think we should go back and see if this child had come to us a little earlier. Supposing she had come to us about 4 years of age or 3 years of age, what could we have done? I mean, right now you have transplanted this patient, whereas we know there are just 100 transplants done in glycogen storage disorder all over the world. This could be one of them. But the other one, what I feel is that if this child had come earlier, or we had picked up this child a little earlier, what could we have done? What is the diet or other management that is available to us that all of us could have done for this child and help this child? So that is what is, the first and foremost is the dietary therapy, which is the mainstay of treatment. What we can do is to give cornstarch, uncooked cornstarch, and high protein diet because of the myopathies. If you would like to add something else, most of these children do respond because they tend to improve with time. These are the children who improve with time. These are the children whose hypoglycemia improves, whose other metabolic disbalances improve. I am a little intrigued with this particular child having needed a transplant. I'm really intrigued.
Sorry, I couldn't. Why? I mean, because you have cirrhosis, you have got a child who's failing to thrive. And they reside in a
Vidut,
part of a country where they cannot,
What was the PELD? I mean, I'm not, don't want to go beyond a certain point. Let's just discuss this elsewhere.
Right.
Finally, they both underwent a liver transplant, discharged after 3 weeks of surgery on immunosuppressant therapy. Explanted liver shows features suggestive of cirrhosis. So, eldest male sibling is still waiting for transplant in view of non-availability of the donor. And these are the investigations which were done just prior to the discharge, which shows almost normalization of the enzymes and the blood parameters.
So I think this is the slide you just highlight the important points. How to differentiate between the various types. I think we've discussed most of it, but just for a recap of everybody.
Hypoglycemia is present most prominently in the type 1. With the type 3, they had the hypoglycemia, but this hypoglycemia keeps on improving trend as the age of the child improves. And type 6 also presents with the hypoglycemia. Rest of the type 4. Type 6, 9 and 11, they plus minus for the hypoglycemia. Dolls-like faces are typical for the type 1. They may be present in the type 3. Bleeding, easy bruisability is a feature which presents in the type 1 because of the platelet aggregation defects. Growth retardation is present in almost all of the types. Hepatomegaly is present in all of the types. Muscle weakness is present mainly in type 3 with both muscle and the liver involvement. That's the type 3A. Type 4, non-classical variety, basically can present with the neuromuscular involvement. Hypertriglyceridemia presents in type 1, type 3, plus minus for the type 11. Hyperlipidemia both in type 1 and type 3. Ketosis can present in type 3 or type 1 during the fasting stages. Liver enzymes raised in the type 3, type 4 mainly. And lactic acidosis present mainly in type 1 with hyperuricemia also in the type 1. Renal involvement in type 1 because of the renal involvement, and in the type 11 also because of the Fanconi's. So, on the treatment part, as the madam is also mentioning, there is no specific therapy. Main therapy is dietary in order to maintain the normal glycemia. Frequent meals high in complex carbohydrates like hydrolyzable cornstarch between the meals and overnight, plus minus for the nasogastric tube feedings in order to prevent the hypoglycemia. In cases presenting with myopathy, frequent high protein meals, especially in type 3 when gluconeogenesis is preserved. Just one slide on drug therapy. Especially they are relevant for type 1 where the type 1B antibiotics can be used for the recurrent infections. Allopurinol when the uric acid levels are high, just in order to prevent the gout or to decrease the kidney stones. For reducing the lipid levels, HMG-CoA reductase can be used in children above 12 years of age. ACE inhibitors, those who had renal involvement, and citrate supplements just in order to prevent nephrocalcinosis. Liver transplantation should be considered in cases who are refractory to medical management, having a severe growth failure, those having end-stage liver disease, multiple liver adenomas, liver malignancies, and classical form of the type 4, which involves progressive liver fibrosis, and has no role in type A, especially with renal involvement is severe enough, leading to end-stage renal disease. Type 3, where there is no substantial cirrhosis or hepatocellular carcinoma, and type 4 is a severe neuromuscular form.
What I thought I would ask Dr. Seema is, apart from the cornstarch, can we use the uncooked rice flour or cooked rice kanji?
Whatever studies, recently I had done some kind of review for this, whatever they have tried to look at is largely cornstarch and the raw cornstarch. The other option that they have is usually to give the continuous nocturnal gastric glucose feeding through the tube, which is usually having a lot of side effects associated to it. The third thing that they have recently come out with a systematic review, which I mentioned to somebody, I was talking about it, is a company in Glasgow has started making a modified cornstarch, which tends to have a very good response in controlling the metabolic abnormalities very early. That is not available in our country, but shortly some research we have been doing, one of the companies is trying to bring that in. I don't know how expensive or less expensive would that be. Apart from that, I think, yes, this is the modified cornstarch that I've heard of that could be helpful. In this particular child, we should have given. But one more thing that I wanted to say is that you don't expect the transaminases to improve very well in type 3. In type 3, despite giving treatment, whatever metabolic disbalance is there, it may get controlled. But the literature says that in type 3, the transaminases do not improve too much even with cornstarch treatment. So they go on with like this, and with time, they may regress on their own.
So one question, why it's said that uncooked cornstarch should not be given to less than 2 years of age. Any particular reason for that? Or
that is more because they have less of amylase to break down that cornstarch.
So the enzyme is absent in
infants.
infants.
The enzyme is absent in infants.
So in
they
those
say
cases, if you have made a diagnosis earlier on, so what should be the approach?
you can feed them that's the initial 6 to 9 months of age, where even otherwise you are feeding them
Frequently.
more frequently. So basically the concept is that you have to feed them frequently and
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
yeah.
So any role for rice, like she was saying, any role for rice in this?
The thing is, basically they have tried multiple carbohydrates. Of these multiple uncooked carbohydrates, rice has the worst effect.
Glycemic index.
Potato is actually higher than rice.
As far
So
as
Western
glycemic
communities who can't use it, try and use
So it's
uncooked.
related to the glycemic index
That
of
is
the
correct. That is
food
correct.
stuff that you are.
Yeah, and the amount of amylase. So for children below the age of 1 year, you use partially cooked cornstarch. What you do is to put the cornstarch in hot water. And just what I do is to make sure that they
Parboiled.
don't have diarrhea. If it's totally, if a child below 1 year has diarrhea after taking, it means the child doesn't have enough amylase. You just cook it a little more. So depending on the stooling, you decide how much to cook
But
it.
on the other hand, I remember doing a little bit of research for the persistent diarrhea patients where we used to give the semolina, and they said that the amount of amylase in saliva increases with the amount of starch in the diet. So they also mentioning in literature that even with children under 2 years of age, you need not really do all that. You can still give them uncooked cornstarch, and with time they tend to produce same amount of starch as the same amount of amylase as that of an adult.
We're talking
maybe
about
you
children
can-
below 1, not 2. Children below 1. 1 to 2, I think they will manage. Children below 1 is the one you will need. Even when you give a night feed, you have to use a partially cooked cornstarch.
This is glycogen storage type 3. There is 70 to 80% of the glycogen storage disorders are type 1. Why is it that Dr. Yacha's center, maybe other centers, my center, we are not getting glycogen storage type 1? The reason is possibly they're dying with hypoglycemia much before they're reaching us, or maybe even you. So we need to do something about that. We need to pick them up fast.
I want to just end saying, transplant is a wonderful surgery for those who need it. Okay? But please choose those who need it. Not for the average GSU who just eats cornstarch and well. That's the only thing. This is a very indicated case where somebody's developed established cirrhosis, splenomegaly, portal hypertension. But don't apply that to the normal GSTUs well otherwise. Okay?
Yep. Thank you, sir. Thank you.